if we're not confident and engaged and certain of our grounding, we're not going to feel safe enough to open our hearts, which
Right.
is the only way forward. We're actually waking up from a real poop dream as a collective. It's
Then a
not usually
collective
fun.
nightmare. And I think for a lot of people, they're waking up in the dream and they're like, this is a nightmare.
A lot of people have a lot of fear of failure. And I'm always
Yeah.
like, it's not a failure unless you repeat it or like miss the lesson.
Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. We are having conversations with psychic friends. I'm your host, Jean Roorda, and today I have my friend, Dr. Erin Sepic. She's a chiropractor, kinesiologist, and intuitive teacher and healer. Hello and welcome, Erin. Yay,
Thank
I'm
you so
so
much
glad
for
you're
having me.
here.
This is
Yay!
awesome.
This is awesome. So I would love to begin with hearing about how you got into teaching and healing on an intuitive level. What's your story? How did you get interested in that and discover that for yourself?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a circuitous path, I suppose it usually is, right?
Yeah.
Circuitous or like electric.
Mm-hmm.
I started having sort of downloads when I was working with patients in my first 5 years in practice. And I think it's baby's fault because I was specializing in infants and pediatrics.
Okay.
I even
Yes.
left graduate school. And as much as my very double air sign, left brain, totally identified, like fixer archetype with patients was so joyful and competent and fun and engaging. With babies, you can't, it's such a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't do exams and you don't like, there's so much to observe physically, there's so much there. But fundamentally, I found that they were my first teachers energetically. If I was
Yeah.
dysregulated at all, I
Mhm.
couldn't get anywhere with
Right.
treating this child and like shifting their nervous system. And I learned that like in graduate school. I got to watch like all of my classmates go through it. And our teachers who were very clinical, like a lot of them had DC PhDs, like
Yeah.
would also pull me aside and be like, yo, this isn't really about, X. You think it's this, it's
Yeah.
actually not. Like,
Oh,
yes, you're absolutely working on the structural level, but not from a structural place. And so
yeah.
I luckily had that understanding, at least vaguely, before I started practice. But then once I did, I began to understand how would you say that? Like, you can't even get the plane off the ground until you say hello and like really greet
Yes.
another human being from
Yeah.
your place, from like where you are. And I see you, that whole namaste thing. Like,
Yeah.
it takes a split second, but if you don't fully greet and accept this child where they're at, they can't even relax. They
Right.
can't tell you what's wrong. They
And
can't,
that's so much more apparent in babies and
yeah,
in
yeah, for sure.
the younger the
For sure.
child. Yeah.
Yeah.
They really
Um,
need to see and feel your
yeah,
presence.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then through some craniosacral work exposure as well, I began to just be able to work with them and put my hands on them and feel exactly where everything, needed to happen.
Yeah.
And it just starts looking like pretty woo at that point. People come in, we have a very clinical conversation with the parents,
Yeah.
and then the treatment like doesn't look anything like you would expect a chiropractic treatment to look like. But I was getting these downloads and they were starting to be sort of auditory
Hmm.
and really intuitive and with adults that I would not have expected to be open to intuitive feedback necessarily.
Hmm.
And the clearer the stuff got, it's not that anything ever didn't go well, but I found myself feeling not out of integrity, but almost like I've
Yeah.
really felt like I needed a context, I needed training, I needed a teacher and a guide.
Hmm.
Um,
To be able to
and
trust that
I
or to
reached
kind of put it in
to
perspective or,
sort of help me, yeah, to help me understand the context. Like, what
yeah.
is happening? Like,
Yeah.
this was happening unbidden, right? I didn't sign up and like ask for this kind of feedback, and it was kind of
Yeah.
weirding me out.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had, and it wasn't about insecurity, it was about like integrity for my patients. Like, I'm like, I really want to know what I'm doing here. I don't want to be
Right.
like free falling.
Love it. Yeah.
Not so much
Like,
about control as
yeah.
just like as
Let me verify
high.
the source.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And also just really being in high integrity with the
Yeah.
information.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember, I think I signed up for like, actually, this woman cold called me. You'll get a kick out of this. She cold called me, this psychic out of New Jersey, and she was so strong. The accent was just
Love it.
priceless.
Yes.
And she was like, "Hey, God told me to call you, and we're gonna do just a quick 15-minute freebie. Is that all right with you?" And I was like,
I
uh,
love it.
"Okay, okay, sure." And for some reason, I was totally fine with it, right? So she gives me 15 minutes of like bang on. I'm like, did you find me in the phone book? Like, how did you even like? It
Amazing.
doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, I did probably two readings with her, and the second one, like two full proper.
Yeah.
And the second one, she really was speaking to this intuitive awakening that I was experiencing, and that I did need a coach. I needed an intuitive coach.
Hmm.
I remember she just wanted me to hear that and
Yeah.
like that register. And I was like, sure. And I hung up the phone and thought, what the fork is that? Like how, I don't look that up in the yellow pages. I don't know how I'm supposed to find this person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I just sort of stepped back and like just handed it to the universe. I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen. I'm, you know, batting that into your court. And
Yeah.
the next morning, my office manager at my office puts a big pile of mail on my desk. And on the very top is a flyer from my teacher, Gwyneth. And it
Wonderful.
said, intuitive coach on the flyer.
Yes.
And I don't know if she dropped that in my office mailbox because like I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I think it's the only flyer she ever distributed.
Wow. Perfect.
And I just was like, it was total. It was just, what's that wacky TV show from the 70s and 80s? Twilight Zone, like that soundtrack. It was
Yes.
just, this happened. So I called Gwyneth and immediately was like, oh, I need this. So she
Yeah.
taught me the tools, and then she and Gail connected and formed the Intuitive Awareness Center. And 14
Love
years
it.
later, here I am,
Love
15.
it.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny. It started in the office.
Yeah.
Babies opened me, and then I started getting information, wanted context, wanted leadership, wanted structure, and
Yeah.
was lucky enough to find it in my mailbox,
Love
which
it. I
I
love
know wasn't
seeing how
easy.
spirit was guiding the whole process and
Yeah, yeah, it
in
was
such
pretty
an
neat.
amazing way. Like
And
the
it's so
cold
fun
call
too, because
from the
Dr. Gale
psychic.
is, yeah, Dr. Gale is an MD, DO, who's an integrative medicine fellow, like specialist. And so our classes were filled with physicians of all kinds who had these gifts and were busy
Yeah.
sort of like integrating them and working with the analyzer and figuring out how to do both. And it was just really lovely. It was like, oh yeah, we're all,
Oh,
yep,
yeah. Yeah.
not
I
our
love
first rodeo.
knowing that there's people in that world, in the world of doctor, very analytical world, very educated world, combining their innate intuitive gifts and in a conscious way, bringing that in. Because I think on some level, everyone working in any kind of healing art, even if it's in the standard medical world, is using their intuition on some level. Like it would be very ineffective not to. But I think for the most part, that's not taught, that's not brought in a conscious way. There's probably a lot of fear and programming around, oh, you can't trust that. You have to follow the rules or the guidelines or
A lot of that.
the
Yeah.
information that's taught to you. But to be able to integrate that and use both, that's
Yeah.
brilliant and beautiful. And I hope we're heading more in that direction. And it's so good to hear there's more doctors having that training.
Yeah. It was so fun. Emergencies, PTs,
Yeah.
neurologists, like it was so fun
Such crucial awareness and information to have access to as healers.
to
And
really understand. Probably more, we'll talk more about this, I think, today, but that binary programming where you can have your institutional intellectual certainty or
right.
you can have your intuitive, but you can't have both. Like
Yeah.
really deprogramming that and like disintegrating that so that you can really have both.
So they don't have to be in competition with one another. They're
Yeah.
just
It's
two
not a
different
dichotomy.
sources of information that can actually work really well together
Mhm.
and make for a much more effective practice as a healer.
Outcomes. Yeah.
So how did your practice as a chiropractor and kinesiologist. How did that shift once you had training and experience in trusting and accessing your intuitive knowing?
A great question. It definitely helped me sort of relax into my gifts
Mm-hmm.
and really trust a lot more because sometimes my intellect, when I'd get a download or when I'd really feel somebody was in it and they had not reported any, otherworldly stress or like
Right.
recent near-death experience or like
You were picking up on that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting where I'd have a message or I'd say something, and then there'd be just an enormous emotional release or a complete like integration of a no longer frozen shoulder. All of a sudden, like what?
Wow.
Yeah, like that's not supposed to be clinically possible. And people would be like, "Where did that come from?" And I'd be like, "I don't, like we don't have time. Like I can't go into that, but like, thank you for you rocked that out because I never do anything. All I do is name it and hold.
Yeah. Just that acknowledgement, being seen.
Yeah.
It's
So
huge.
that
When
it
someone
was
is
so
really seen, that's a huge healing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
even when they least expect to be seen.
Right.
And then to decline my sort of left brain clinical, even passionate, excited, enthusiastic desire to like explain it.
Right.
Like, nah. Like we could talk about this on another time. And even that, like once I started training, it was probably 6 years because I started training for me. Even
Right.
though my work, my desire to be in a high alignment and in high integrity with whatever was happening, drove the seeking.
Yeah.
Once I found it, it was my own like, oh, this is me. This is
Yeah.
for me. This
For
is
your
my
own.
development,
Yeah.
my language. It just felt so resonant and supportive personally. I never thought I would do this work professionally. Like that was never the goal.
Right.
And it wasn't until like 6 years in, after however many courses and teachers and advanced blah blah, that I started doing readings at all. But I just offer them to patients who I knew were ready and who needed the support
Yeah.
and who we had a great rapport, and I knew that it would go really well. And then slowly it started spreading into like patients and their friends and family.
Yeah.
But it kind of stayed there for a good 6 years before I had the courage to sort of come out of the closet as an intuitive, because I know a lot of people in my community, and I'm lucky to be really well connected to wonderful humans. And I started to realize one day I woke up and was like, I remember one of these buzz terms in the lexicon these days, but it went by and it kind of stung on its way by. It was authentically self-expressed. And I
Mm.
was like, it didn't bother me. Like, I don't need the whole world to know who I am, like, in the least. It was just like, I looked around and was like, oh, there's some people that I love who love me, who don't know anything about this whole world that is by far the most important part of my life, if you
Wow.
ask me.
Yeah.
And like, that doesn't feel good. Like, that's
You're
so
like,
I
am
ended up,
I authentically self-expressed?
right? I'm
But
like,
you're feeling like you weren't authentic if you didn't make sure everybody knew that about you.
well, not everybody, but like, even my inner tribe.
Yeah.
Um,
Closest circle.
and
Yeah.
no and understanding what a gift it was and how many people it had helped, and I still was sort of keeping it under wraps. I was like, I think I might need to do more of this. This is like highly
Yeah.
really-
It's needed.
yeah, I'm like, we could attach a whole bunch of words to this.
Right.
Yeah,
But
it's needed.
it's beautiful though. For you, it was just a natural extension of the work you were already doing. You were in the healing arts, and even if it was more clinical, you just naturally could extend that aspect of healing that was just so innate for you into
Right.
your work and grow it from there. It was a very organic process for you and
Yeah,
continues to be.
yeah, it does. I think after I finally came out of the closet, I sort of checked the box by launching a website and like putting it out there. But I
Yeah.
didn't like optimize it. I didn't do anything with it,
Right.
but at least it was out there.
Yeah.
So if I was Googled or something, it would come up. So it was another few years before I was like, all right, I need to start teaching. This stuff is saving my life. It's changed my life from the beginning. And I was starting to see just how much the culture was shifting and the readiness was building, and the need was skyrocketing, of course. And I was like, okay, okay. And that was several years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm at this point, I'm much less, am I at all sheepish or insecure about being all of me? It's very funny. There's a truth bomb from Danielle Laporte that I keep on my window, and it says, leverage your contradictions. And I
Oh,
do. I've always felt like a walking contradiction, like my whole life. And this is just like, oh yeah, I'm just really stepping into it. I'm owning it now. It's so
I
fun.
see those contradictions as like you're a broad spectrum human being, right?
Nice.
Cover
I
all
love
the
it.
territory.
Like, and you'll have an easier time like declining the dichotomy. Like, take a red pill. You're not a blue pill kind of person. Oh God.
So
Yeah,
I love
it's been a
hearing
journey.
about how the intuitive practice shifted for your clinical practice in that really you could just go more in depth with people. There's a deeper level of healing you could offer your patients. But then how did that shift for you? It sounds like getting into the intuitive work, you realized, oh, this is for me. Like, even though by extension, when you heal yourself, you're able to support others in a deeper healing capacity as well. How did that shift for you personally then? How did your life
Once I started training,
yeah, how did in terms of your personal world and your experience of yourself
yeah.
in the world, how did that shift once you learned some spiritual tools and began practicing more of your intuitive knowing?
The most obvious impact that I can remember at that time was on my like real time and my relationships.
Mm,
It was a huge piece.
yeah.
And right around there, within the next 6, 8 months, I had a 15-year relationship that I ended. And I just suddenly, it's like I sort of woke up and was able to see that I was on a perfectly well-intended path,
Mm-hmm.
but it actually wasn't why I came here. And I suddenly became aware of that.
Yeah.
And which is, heartbreaking when you
Yeah.
have this commitment, you have this, no, I meant to have babies, I meant to do this thing, and oh geez, it's almost like you look at your train ticket and you're like, but this is actually not where I'm supposed to go.
Going a
Like I
different
really do
direction.
now, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
so it was tough. So I went pretty deep and dark then, but I knew I was going to be fine, like personally, but it wasn't easy. And using these tools and trusting myself. And at the same time, I think doing this work sort of magnetized three beautiful women into my life, into my orbit that were really there for me in a very supportive way, which was incredible. It's just, it changes all your relationships when you really see yourself and you can own
Yeah.
that like you can approach this from any psychologist will tell you this, like your unconditional self-love and your unconditional self-acceptance is
Right.
like if you can get there, pretty much everything else is going to work out,
Yeah.
like your
You're good
boundary
for
practice, you don't have to
2002.
go to boundary class school, you just like if you
Mhm.
own and love yourself. So it was transformative for my relationships
Yeah.
and really deeply supportive. And I started to, I mean, it's just different. The most palpable thing right away was their effect on all of my relationships and
Yeah.
how much more
Transforming.
authentic and
Hmm.
how much permission I gave myself to be imperfect and in process, like
Yeah. Love
massive. 'Cause I was so, I think we're all really hard on ourselves in a lot of different ways. And I continue to be wildly imperfect in a whole lot of ways in my life, but perfection is a complete myth. But I suddenly had my permission to be who I was, even in
it.
that not even sure yet. But I
Yeah.
know unfortunately, I know it's not that thing
Right.
that I want to.
In that
Um,
discovery process, it's like I'm giving myself full permission to be myself. I love that.
yeah,
Even if I don't know exactly what that is yet, but I
yeah,
know what it's not.
yeah, I do know what it's not. A lot of people have a lot of fear of failure. And I'm always
Yeah.
like, it's not a failure unless you repeat it or like miss the lesson. Like
Right.
knowing what you don't want or what doesn't work is
Yeah.
like incredibly valuable data.
Yeah. There's so much information about that, like in the sports world and the
Yeah,
business world. Like you can't succeed unless you fail a lot first because
yeah,
all of your
fail.
no's or your mess ups are just information that leads you to that yes or that success. Such a good
But
reminder.
yeah, yeah, my relationships really, they just shifted
Yeah.
hugely after that.
Yeah.
And I gave
Transformed
myself a lot
even.
of,
You
sorry.
use the word transformed, right? Your relationship with yourself transformed, and then that expanded out into all of your relationships.
And I knew because that key relationship that transitioned 15 years is a long time. We sort of defined who we were as adults while
Right.
we were together.
Right.
So it was a really deep period of redefinition, and
Huge identity shift there for
yeah,
sure.
it was a big shift. And I lived by myself in the woods, like a mile from the nearest parking spot for a year and a half after that. Like
Amazing.
I went deep. I was like, oh, I got places to go. Like I need to go away from people. So like I made huge changes to my practice. The only thing that didn't change was that I continued to see patients. Like
Yeah.
that was the only stable thing.
Yeah.
And everything else was in flux. So we were talking about the storm and like how it really
Mhm.
impacted me personally, and having access to these tools and this information and learning to trust it and learning to let it guide me. Really, the visual that keeps coming through is it was an anchor in a storm.
Yeah.
If I'm the boat, this provided a huge anchor. And even though things got really hard after that, I went through like an intense growth period. I always knew I was going to be fine. It was
Yeah.
very strange. Like the
Yeah.
certainty that came through, like, I mean, most of my friends were worried about me, like really worried.
Like, are you
Be fine. Like,
gonna be
ah, like your life is unrecognizable from 3 months ago. I don't really
fine?
know. And they
Yeah.
had every right to be concerned, but it was an uncommon level of certainty and an uncommon level of trust in the stability of that connection
Yeah.
to weather anything that was thrown my way. And I mean, I went through it. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I was like, it might be bad weather. Like I mean, we were in it.
Like, this is a full-on
Yeah.
storm.
Yeah. So I knew like I was able to put appropriate value on this and just wake up to that it was really the most important thing to me, being in alignment and being in integrity in that way.
Yeah.
I just knew that when I got through that poop storm, that I would be much better suited to actually to hold space for people that were really in it. Because at that point in my life, all in all, I had a fairly idyllic childhood. Anyone watching me from the outside, to have been in the healing arts, even clinically, like
Mhm.
I'd never had to heal anything but a broken bone my whole
Yeah.
life. I'd never had to, even after this like life awakening, I later went through a different healing crisis from a physiological perspective,
Mhm.
which actually involved some heart failure. And that was really kind of amazing. And the same dogged, probably infuriating certainty in my own, like, I was like, this is going to be fine. I'm going to knock this out of the park in like record time. Like, nobody's going to see this coming. And I knew I would, and I did.
Yeah.
But people who loved me were really scared. And I was like,
Wow.
but
Really?
that was the
They
time where
didn't
it really
trust you
hit me. I was
after
like,
your other
right.
experience.
I'm like, oh, I've never really healed anything on the inside. I've never had to fix or resolve or integrate
Yeah. You
anything
didn't
other than
have
like
like
a simple.
traumatic upbringing,
Yeah.
which is true of a lot of healers do have that
Hmm.
traumatic upbringing, and then the
Hmm.
process of healing themselves from that trauma is really what supports and
Yeah.
informs them in working with other people. So I hear you. You were like, can I really do this if I
Yeah. Can I fly this flag if I haven't been through anything? Like, I'm going to go through this and then I'll have a lot better idea what it's like to be in the
Yeah.
blue, as it were.
So you got
But
to
yeah.
experience a different kind of healing transformation of just really getting to know yourself on a much deeper level, really transforming your identity, and really where it sounds like where you sourced information, right? Because before connecting with your intuitive knowing, there was that, we're calling it clinical, but analytical, intellectual,
Yeah.
like really sourcing information from outside of yourself in a way that was considered just correct and acceptable. And then
Yeah.
you really shifted that inner compass, right, to really sourcing that from within and from your own connection to spirit. That's a huge transformation. Even if in the process you're not having to undo a bunch of trauma, it can feel like a traumatic experience.
Oh, it was. I mean, it really was unrecognizable. It's just like
Yeah,
so
amazing.
much fell away. And
Yeah.
I ran and hid from the rest of it, probably. I was like, I have a lot of things I need to look at. It was
Yeah.
really interesting because I saw patients Monday through Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And for about the first 3 months that I was living in the woods, I received these beautiful downloads on like a Thursday night,
Mm-hmm.
maybe Friday morning on the long end. And it was a lot to figure out. There's no figuring, as you
Integrate.
know, like
Yeah.
it's just a lot to integrate, a lot to process.
Be with. Yeah.
And it was my full-time job all weekend.
Wow.
But I didn't see anybody, I didn't touch anybody
Yeah.
for 3 full days.
Right.
And my commitment to myself was to always be in full alignment and clear,
Yeah.
grounded before I ever lay hands on anybody Monday morning. And that's sort of how it came. Like spirit just knew to deliver the stuff when I could handle it and to support my integration and to make sure that I like really felt in alignment or in integrity
Yeah.
before I returned to the office. And that sort of, it kept me, my practice kept me grounded,
Yeah.
kept me directed, kept me,
And in the world
yeah.
with
Yeah,
your.
otherwise, you're right. It would have been very tempting to not come back.
It's helpful to have that anchor in the
Wizards.
world. Sometimes when someone's in a deep inner spiritual transformative experience, one, it can feel challenging to be in the world and still have to do the daily thing, the job or whatever it is. But it can also feel like
Taxes.
either it's pulling us out. It can feel challenging to have both, right? To be in the world while you're in that deep inner practice. So how wonderful for you that you had this like, okay, these are the days that I'm.
It was so strange, and I felt so accommodated.
You had it very nicely organized.
I really,
Set it up in a very organized way for you. So when you receive these messages, you said, are these are for you, for your own inner process of healing and transformation, like messages about maybe
totally personal.
yeah, just what you're letting go of, what you're
And a lot
deprogramming.
of them weren't like verbal. It was almost rememberings.
Yeah, just awarenesses and knowings.
Yeah, and I was starting to have, and I haven't had a lot of this. I've more seen it clairvoyantly as I've developed.
Yeah.
But back then, I was starting to actually recall visually past lives, like experiences that I've had before, which naturally weirded the heck out of me when it first started. I was just like, I think I'm here in this place, but I see a whole dimension
Right.
over,
And
I'm like
experiencing a different lifetime.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
that can
I'll
be
never forget when I
disorienting.
first saw. Did you see Doctor Strange? You must have seen the Marvel.
At some point, probably, yes.
Yeah, probably 10 years ago or more.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember being like, because like now we have the visual effects to like make that, and like I'm like such a nerd. I was like, yes, and exactly, and that's what astral looks like. I'm like, it
That's
was
great.
so funny, but I had no context for it. I had no,
Right.
so it was pretty freaky at the beginning, but a lot of different downloads, all about personal healing, integration, remembrance,
Yeah,
alignment, and yeah, it was very personal, which was great.
yeah.
Yeah, it was very accommodating, and it was not easy. I
Yeah.
remember literally sitting down at probably like 10 weeks straight of this, like there was no break. It just
Mhm.
kept happening. And at about 10 weeks, I just sat down and was like, listen, whichever of my guides is running this show, like, I need you to know that this is not sustainable. Like,
Yeah.
I need it to wind down soon because I'm like,
press pause or have a little vacation.
I wasn't sure. I kept wanting to see like a gas gauge or something. And
Yeah.
I felt like I was looking at a container that was really close to overfilling. And just, I was like, I know I'm not really going to be able to breathe once we flow over. So like,
Maximum capacity.
can somebody check the, and luckily, I think it was 2 weeks later, it just eased completely. It's like I
Yeah.
went through a thing
Mm-hmm.
and again, I knew I could make it through the thing. That was probably the only time I was nervous was when about 10 weeks in where I was like, I really need a break. Like I need, like,
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting more than I can handle here.
yeah, I'm like, oh. And that was probably the only time I was nervous. It's just like,
Wow.
I know I can handle it. I just don't know if I can handle it and practice and work and support or feed myself.
Yeah, that's often the challenge for people going through deep inner work and change and transformation is how do you balance still being in the world, just like being a human and functioning and creating an income, or maybe you have a family, you have kids, you have all of that, and really feeling like all you can manage is to just be with everything that you're experiencing in your inner world.
Especially if you're a big feeler or anybody in Pisces right now, or like in a world like the one that we're in now, like
Yeah.
about a storm or
All the sensitive ones. Yes, I can totally relate. I have a Pisces moon, so growth periods, yeah, they always involve deep emotional shifts and changes and feeling of everyone going through it, not just me.
everyone going through it. I have a really interesting, I'm still learning, but I've been going down a pretty deep dive on astrology for the last couple of years, and I was joking with my mom a few months ago. I was explaining, I was like, okay, so I'm a Gemini sun with an Aquarius moon, and like I've had this weird mix of being an empath since I was a little one, and also being able to fully intellectualize my emotions. Like I can schedule when I want to feel stuff.
Yeah.
I always have been able to. And I mentioned something like it, I was like, yeah, it must be weird to like have a daughter that da da da. And she goes, well, it's good that you know that. She's like, yeah, I've noticed. Like, why are you feeling right now? Like, what is that about? So
but
it's really
schedule it in. You create space for it, right? In a very organized
if it's rage,
way.
it should be probably a lone space, or if it's, like whatever. If you have people that don't mind. It's so funny. But now, like, to be able to sort of blend that, like, I can feel like a lightning rod in a crowd. And I used to do that. And live music. I remember the first time I ever saw a Broadway show, I just like shook and wept through the whole opening number. It was The Lion King, though, in my defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're coming through the aisles.
Right.
Yeah, I was like not expecting it, and the sheer volume, like the number of voices, and I remember my partner was looking at me and like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was literally just like, like full, and it wasn't like happy. It was like, I am a copper rod in a lightning storm. Like this is not okay. So I have that like totally weird intellectual like emotional scheduler, and this empathy that I had to get a lot of help with these tools on how to work that energy hygiene and how to only process what's actually mine in my body. It's like, oh, what a thought. Like,
were you just processing the whole theater there?
yeah. It's so funny. As healers, right? We take on so, and as women, let alone the mothers that I work with. We take on so much. And in this climate right now,
oh, it's so
short-term proposition.
I love your term for it, the energy hygiene. This is great.
Yeah.
I love that term. Being able to recognize what is energy that is ours to work, to heal, to clean, to clean up.
Schedule.
To schedule a time to let go of. And what isn't, right? Because we don't have to take a psychic shower for the whole world.
Amen.
We can just mop up our own. But in cleaning up our own space, it really does affect. That's the beauty of it. It does affect everyone without having to be responsible for everyone. Just taking care of our own space really supports and affects everyone in also being able to take care of their own space.
Yeah. Yeah, the vibration, the frequency. Like we live in a quantum world.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any real arguing that from however left-brain didactic scientific of an angle you want to take. Like, we're there.
Yeah. We all know that now. Our vibration affects the vibration around us. Yeah.
And the more we get clear on having our own permission to only process what's ours,
right,
the more we can read and like have that certainty and that guidance around like, and John's being really nice to me. I know I just met him, but I don't think he likes me very much. And I'm trying to figure out what his problem is. Why am I trying to do that? Like you just like, what? As opposed to, why didn't he like me? Or blah, 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 such a fascinating that it's clarity.
Yeah, having clarity.
Your own permission and all the clarity.
So much
Yeah.
freedom in that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
To not be weighed
Deprogramming is the
down.
word of the year, isn't it?
Yes, deprogramming is a great word for the year.
I just about fell over.
Deprogramming.
One of my friends recently mentioned that he'd never seen The Matrix, and I was like,
Oh, wow.
okay, it's maybe never been more relevant. Like we were watching it tonight, and I'm going to be watching your face the whole time.
Right.
We're going to talk about it for the next month. So funny, but all these different angles on how the media and the different how the media rephrase. And I think probably one of the things I'd love to speak to briefly is the divisive narrative. The I'll call it the separation story because
A great way to put it.
it's sort of
We've been playing that story for a long
we
time.
really have. We really have. The whole
Yeah.
planet, but like in this country, in the US, over the
Amplified for
last
sure.
whatever, I don't know how many years, but right now it's gotten to the point where most people who are like really in the political spectrum are having a harder time remembering a time when there was respectful discourse across the aisle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's not even
Friendly dialogue. What's that?
yeah, even challenging dialogue in a respectful way.
Right.
Like we have
Just
different value sets.
respectful.
Like how can we actually progress and like
Right.
create together? Like that
Like
is
the
just
concept of we can disagree but still communicate.
yeah, and even respect each other. It's like
Right. Like
um
communicate in a respectful manner.
but yeah, I think there's a lot of disempowerment that's potentially behind that program. Because if we're not safe from each other and all we can do is focus on how the other person,
Is bad and wrong.
yeah, is bad, wrong, different values, just like
Right.
judgment soup
It's judgments.
versus being a lot more. I think that's part of the medicine that I have to share at this point in my transmission, that the high road of Gemini is being able to hold paradox. And I
Yes.
don't know that it's ever been more necessary than it is in this sort of like
Absolutely.
dichotomous world. Like
Yeah.
you can, and because curiosity drives everything in that mental model.
Mm-hmm.
I come from Canada. Our whole political spectrum traditionally, historically, has been like one order to the left of this country. And I found that when I came here
Mm-hmm.
back in 96. So I always sort of identified one way.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in the last 8 years or so, I kind of started looking for other groups of people and like seeking dialogue and
Yeah.
understanding, when you do this work, and even if you know Marshall Rosenberg's work, like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to have been through a decade of clairvoyant training, but really understanding that vibration, like, are you open or are you really just selling something? Like,
Yeah.
this is the right value, this is the right perspective. Are
Yeah.
you actually really genuinely curious why this person feels this way about this
Right.
issue? Because
Right.
when you really show up fully permitted, right, in your own imperfectness and really allow your heart to reflect that curiosity,
Yeah.
there has to, that curiosity, which I realize is part of the issue these days, there has to be an understanding that you might be missing something.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we're missing each other, probably we're all missing something.
Yeah.
Like I want to know what that thing is, that like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
insatiable, like scorpionic, like that. I want to know all the things. So I have that sort of ability, and I'm glad that I've been able to communicate with a lot of people in areas and in groups that I would never have imagined myself joining or listening to, or just from sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
Can we value this and value this? How do we, get together and connect?
Mhm.
And, a lot of this, the energetic climate right now makes this very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And given the uncertainty and chaos in this country, at least right now, ish, most people, I think, would probably have that determination of these times, these challenging times. This has never been more important. And also, it's not, I very much respect that it's not easy.
Not easy. No, that divisive programming has been around for so long, and it's just as it's coming out, I do know that it's coming out, it's getting thicker.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
getting thicker and more on the surface. And so it might feel like we have to reach a little deeper into our inner resources of, like you said, curiosity. Curiosity really comes from that space of neutrality, right? Instead of being for or against whatever the other person is sharing, let me just be curious about where that perspective is coming from within them, what experience they've had in life that led to that interpretation of reality, because we're all just having different interpretations.
We really are. I love that. I don't know if you've heard
Sit and
this.
fight over whose interpretation is correct or right.
Amen.
You
Amen.
know, it comes back to that analogy of if you've got an elephant, and so you've got this beautiful elephant, but everybody's blindfolded, and one person is touching the foot, and one person's touching the trunk, and one person's touching the tail. And if we're all experiencing different parts of the elephant, how silly is it to argue about who's
Amen.
right?
Amen.
Whose
I
perspective
think
is right?
Peter
It's like,
Bone's definition of judgment. Have you heard
yeah,
this? He's really interesting. He says, I think I can pull it. He says judgment means that if I had gone through everything that you had gone through and I believed everything that you had the same experiences, that given this event that happened, I would have made a different decision. That's actually what judgment means.
yeah. How harsh is that?
What? I was like, man, he's a mind bender of all kinds
Mhm.
of, levels, but I really resonated with that. I was like,
Yeah.
wait, it's not just about, and one of the things that I'm sure we both teach on is like, once you've made a judgment, once you have assigned a charge to an event or something somebody said or somebody's core of their being, once you've assigned that charge and made that judgment, you most often, most of us run into a wall of resistance
Yeah.
as a result of that charge
Yeah.
and that story and that narrative.
No.
So to have that curiosity, like before that first step, like I wonder, maybe
To
how
be
did this
able to
come to
let go
be?
of the judgment and just be curious.
Yeah, like let's just
Yeah.
be. It doesn't mean that we don't stand up and we don't align with our passions, with our whole hearts. There's a lot of people being like, oh my God, rose-colored glasses or
Yeah.
ostrich headed sand. Or I'm like, no, man,
No,
that's
it's
not what's
not really.
happening here. Our only way to go forward is together. One of the things that I enjoy is that from like a psychological perspective,
Mhm.
from I don't know if this is Jungian, I think it's in a whole bunch of different arenas, but there's a generally accepted perspective that when we judge someone, that there is a part of ourselves that is not integrated or not accepted. And
It's really a self judgment.
it's absolutely a self-judgment or a fear or a repression or a suppression or
Yeah.
some kind of story in there. Because if we fully are integrated and self-accepted, we suddenly don't have the problems with other people
Yeah.
being there. And
It's a hard pill to swallow.
it is a hard pill to swallow. I mean, this is, it's
Yeah.
master's level stuff. It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
joke, but
Because
what's
when you're in
funny with
that
that?
judgment, you don't want to hear that. You're like, no, no, I'm definitely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely there. Like my ego is really feeding off of
That's
this
the,
mountain of wrongness that's happening right
yeah.
now.
That's where that resistance comes in to
Yeah,
defend the
yeah,
judgment, right? No, definitely right
exactly.
about that. And
Yeah.
just
No,
resist anything else.
I'm like, no, we get it, we get it. And the only way forward really is together. Like it's not in oppression or suppression. It's like, all right, who's ready to actually create some stuff? Like,
Yeah.
let's like take our vital life force and move
Do
it
this.
forward. Like collaborate and create like something that actually works. Like, let's do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
And the only way to do that, like you said, is together. You don't end a
yeah,
war
and that's
by having a war.
what is that Hawaiian prayer that I can never say it. It's like Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono. Yeah.
Like
Ho'oponopono.
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 Thank you. Thank you for that. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And it embodies like everything that we just said. Have you heard the story of the clinician in the criminal like mental health ward that
No.
apparently this was all written up in a book,
Wow.
but there was a sort of a criminally insane institution that existed somewhere in this country, I believe. And they were thinking that they were going to need to shut it down because they were running into real issues with staffing it
Yeah.
because people just weren't safe.
Yeah.
There had been a lot of like there had been a slow build, but the number of incidents
Yeah.
was at like an all-time high and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And I don't know how this happened, but this man, this psychiatrist, he
Mhm.
was definitely a researcher.
Mhm.
which is extra funny. But he came, sorry, I'm saying extra funny because I am a recovered left brain, like
Yeah.
100% intellectual person. So he came and I think he said hello to a couple patients,
Mhm.
but all he did was he walked around the whole place saying that prayer in
Yeah.
his heart and embodying it,
Which is, I'm
which is,
sorry.
please,
I love you. Please forgive me.
please forgive me.
Yeah.
Is that it? Or is there four?
I believe it includes an apology.
I love you.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
Yeah.
love you. Please forgive me. Mhm.
Thank you. I love you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. The gratitude.
That's all it is. It's so simple. And what would this guy, who's never had anything to do with these patients who did whatever they, like,
Yeah.
this makes no sense. And a lot of people, that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at. It's
Right.
like, why would I apologize for something I didn't do? Like,
Right. Yeah. When on the surface, Ho'oponopono, when you look at it, it's like, what is this I'm
right?
sorry about?
Yes.
And it's really that self-love piece. He's really practicing self-forgiveness and just allowing any judgment that comes up when he's experiencing these patients who are in deep psychotic states
Yeah. Yeah.
of
This is
insanity.
not,
Just
this is not
really,
surface level stuff.
yeah, just really looking within and forgiving any judgment that comes up, right? Any resistance.
Any resistance, any part of himself that resists any part of them.
Yeah.
Embody that to such a high frequency that the data, the research is astounding.
Yeah.
Like in less than 6 months, in 3 months, they had more than cut the events in half. And when you
Wow.
look at the graph, it's mind-boggling. But in 6 months later, they had achieved things that made no sense. And he didn't talk to anybody. He didn't do sessions with any
Right.
of these patients. Like he didn't actually, he just wandered around
Talk about no effort.
embodying,
He's just,
right?
yeah,
He
beautiful.
just he just bead. He bead.
Just went in there and bead.
Can you say the prayer again, the name of the prayer?
Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono. He bead Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, he just went in
And he
there and
completely transmuted.
yeah,
He transmuted the whole thing.
just with
One
his
guy.
own inner practice of forgiveness. It's so powerful. So
And
powerful.
that's where we're going.
Yeah.
That's where we're going. The
Wow.
way
So
forward.
imagine what we could do in the world without doing anything. If
Right?
we're all practicing Ho'oponopono, that forgiveness practice in relationship to whatever came up, but especially this very charged political climate, seeing everyone's probably got their favorite person to hate in the media.
Yeah.
So really
There's so much.
to practice that just with yourself.
Practice
What
that.
comes up within you? What judgments, what hatreds, what blame comes up on a
And to
daily
forgive
basis,
yourself.
just in the
How
world,
fully
and
can
of
you
course
forgive
with
yourself?
our inner circle too, right?
Mm.
Our favorite family member to not like. If we were practicing forgiveness with each of those people within our lives, whether they're out there in the media or in politics
hmm
or in the
And
workplace.
as energy workers, like that
Yeah.
that energy, it exists. It
Yeah.
impacts people.
It
So
impacts.
like I have a lot of compassion for people in the spotlight, just handling a lot of energy in all
Yeah.
kinds of different levels of mastery, like
Right.
and well-being.
Yes. Yeah.
But
To
yeah,
be able
it's a
to,
lot. I can have compassion.
well, that brings me back to when you shared about energy hygiene. And we said, oh, yeah, that's important for it impacts those around you, but it also impacts your own health, right? When you're not maintaining your own energetic space, it turns into some pretty intense unwellness on a physical level.
For sure.
Right away, your body's like, excuse me.
Right away, or depending how good you are at ignoring the signs,
Yeah, maybe.
um, eventually it'll get to the point where it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's been one of the
Your
interesting
attention.
like fences I've had to walk professionally because as I started to understand that and really sort of know it to be true, first with patients and then very much with myself and my own health, it's like, oh, like before something shows up in a structure, assuming no like blunt trauma, like
Right.
obvious
Right.
assault, before it's present in your structure, it's actually present in your physiology
Yeah.
and like how the muscles move the joints, how you are
Wow.
moving your
Yeah.
joints. Like
Yeah.
that happens first. And it's
Mhm.
happened probably for a while before that. shows up.
Right.
And then you start going down this rabbit hole that we've both been down. And then
Yeah.
you realize it's present in someone's field
Before, yeah.
before it's present in the neurology, physiology, structure.
Present in the etheric body. And before
Yeah.
that, it's present.
And then if your job is working on the structural level, like suddenly that's sort of like, oh,
Yeah.
I
Right.
like,
How do
wait
you
a minute,
like how do you offer that information? Because if
yeah,
I can only imagine if I was just working on a physical level with someone, but you're seeing, oh, this is
yeah,
coming from
yeah.
this emotional pattern, right? Or this
Great. What
mental
can we do about your
pattern.
relationship with your
Yeah.
son? Like, yeah.
We've got to talk about this.
Oh, my damn chiropractor. Yeah, he's talking about my yeah, it was tricky. And I thought for a while that I'd really fall out of love with this work. But I think chiropractic is a really funny little structural art form. I just had approached it from a very kind of medicalized, like intellectual angle.
Yeah.
But the origin of the whole practice was actually pretty amusingly aligned with the energy coming into the
Yeah.
body, which I always totally rejected. Like I always judged it,
Oh,
resisted
that's
it,
so
like tossed it
funny.
out.
Yeah.
And after years of, I'm like, oh my God, this is so apropos. So I find that, and I'm a private part-time cash practice. I have a lot of flexibility to offer what my patients need the most.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to be able to lay hands on people
Hmm.
when I do that. It's not essential by any means, but I'm grateful that I still really enjoy that work. I love going into the woo with people on Zoom and like all
Yeah.
my healing sessions and my teaching. It's wonderful and grounded, obviously. But I still love that body work. But I remember once I figured that out, I was like, oh God, like how can I keep working here when I know?
But it is
So
powerful to be able to integrate it because
yeah.
sometimes there's certain emotional traumas or traumas on whether it's emotional or mental level that do really settle into the body and sometimes need that actual just physical connection touch to unlock that for the
Yeah.
person, you know. I've talked about this in
Gosh.
other conversations with psychic friends, how if we're only approaching it from that higher spiritual level, sometimes for some people it reaches a point of integration into the body where it doesn't move further until there's a physical connection.
Mm.
Hello on that deeper level, whether it's somatics, breathing into it, or having someone else really bring that physical awareness to it
Mm.
to unlock something. So
Absolutely.
it's really beautiful to be able to offer that full spectrum.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, I've had a lot of it. I certainly get readings for myself, but I also get body work and
Yeah, just feels
I
good. We
love
have
it.
bodies, you know?
I know, right? I used to think it was like, I mean, it's funny because as an athlete, I think I got away with a lot because I
Mm.
learned how to take care of myself and I was so embodied in a way that as a double air sign, I would never have been if it weren't for sports.
Yeah.
Like that just wouldn't have, I don't
Yeah.
know where I would have been at. I've been 6 feet tall since I was about 11 years old. I probably would have
Wow.
just,
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have just wisped my way through high school and college.
Yeah.
But luckily, thank God for athletics. But
Wonderful.
it's funny because as an adult, when I started understanding all of this stuff, it would have been so easy for me to just invalidate the body and be like, no, it's
Yeah.
all, which we've all sort of gone through recall of having lifetimes like that, where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, no, no, the integration is huge and it's a
Yeah.
gift. And the more we care for it, the better it can support
Yeah.
all the juice that fills it.
We bring, yes. Yeah, it's important if our body is, in some traditions, it's called a temple. I like to think of it as a vehicle.
I love that. Yeah,
They're
your
great.
course is called Chalice, right? Or your
Yeah. Yeah.
love that.
Our bodies are like a chalice and our hearts and having that, it's really that space, and it is a sacred space to work in and move through and communicate here. But we got to take good care of our
We
vessel,
do.
so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the car.
Yeah.
When are you getting inspected? And are you checking your fuel filters? And
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much to it. And it's so much about self-love. And
Yeah. And including all the levels of our being in that
yeah,
self-love
yeah.
practice.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I do in my practice is it's no trying. I just offer it to people.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan, I don't know that you and your body have been on the same side of the table for years.
Right.
There's a real contention here. Like you
Yeah.
feel that she should be showing up in a certain way and supporting you, and it's really inconvenient that this hip is like not like
Yeah.
it's like can we just reconnect you and realize that like she's been talking to you for 2 years
Oh,
and
I
she's
love that.
in
Yeah.
after the x-ray like not in any kind of a shaming way but like a kind
Right.
of an amusing way because I can relate personally.
Right. Coming from
Like, no,
experience.
like let's just come like we're all on the same team here, actually. There's no
Yeah.
entitlement. Like I have this vehicle, it should work no
Right.
matter what I do and how little I,
Yeah.
invest in it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That
there's a
is
lot of amusement there. I'm just like, we're just on the same team. When's the last time you
that.
like validated your employee over here?
Yeah.
Like, I really
Your
appreciate
body's
that.
working really hard for you.
Fill that tank.
Give it some validation and appreciation and
Yeah. Oh
some
my
good
God, it's so
fuel.
beautiful.
Yeah. I love that. And really listen.
Exactly.
As
You
the
can't
body
be connected. You
communicates.
can't listen. You can't get messages if you're not connected.
Yeah.
If you have this boundary between you and your vehicle,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's tough to.
Kind of like battling the vehicle or like, come on, we got to do this.
For sure, for
Or
sure.
like, work for me.
Yeah. Or it's like there's a lot of victimhood energy potential there too. It's like,
Right.
oh, my vehicle, unfortunately.
Yeah. There's a lot of blame towards
Oh
the
well.
body. Yeah.
There's
Like I got a bad one.
yeah. What am I supposed to do here?
Yeah. It didn't come with the right parts or it didn't come.
Yeah, I love just what a high. I love the name of your podcast, by the way. It's just beautiful. There's so much room for amusement in those deeply uncomfortable places. I know our teacher, Michael, used to joke about like gout, which is
Yeah. Like,
reliably one of the most painful things you can go through as a human, and like
right.
how he figured out how to like, boy, that was a lot of pain. Like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
keeping the amusement high is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
And
able
that
to do that.
happens. That's like a natural byproduct of really identifying as spirit. When you know who you are, even if your body and you love your body, even if it's going through the most painful experience, you can have your amusement because that trust is there. Like you shared in your experience of developing your intuition, you had that trust. Like this might look like the craziest storm and like a total mess, but I know part of you just had that certainty and trust. I know it's going to be okay, right? And when you know it's going to be okay, you can have amusement. Like, yep, things look like
You're right. Yeah.
things are falling apart and this looks really bad and it feels really bad. And, there's a lot of pain here. But when there's that certainty and knowing that you're going to get through it, you can
Yeah,
have amusement about it.
there was a GIF that went by, or I saw it. It probably was there for a long time, but during the floods in Nashville,
Yeah.
it was when I saw it. So it must have been being used a lot. But there was an actual, sorry, it's like not a funny thing to laugh about, but the GIF is what's funny.
Yeah.
And there was like a flooding street, and I don't know if it was AI. It looked real,
Yeah.
but there was, clearly a lot of water moving down a street,
Yes.
and there was an actual dumpster
Yes.
with one lid open all the way
Yeah.
or gone, and the garbage inside was actually on fire, and the dumpster was floating down. Like you could tell it was like it's big and metal and heavy enough. It's being kind of slid along the street. Like it wasn't rocking like a boat or anything.
Right.
But it was literally a dumpster fire floating by on the flood that was,
Wow.
and I don't know, who knows where it was, but
It's
I just
thought the time.
hilarious. So it's like, and how do we have that like grounded certainty where we're like, yeah, that's happening. That's really happening. And I am in this moment, I am safe and aligned, and I'm going to get better at letting go of what is being pulled away or what is being. That's so
being released.
Yeah, but I got such a kick out of that GIF, and it's pretty on point these days.
Yeah. Well, it's such like a sign of the times. There's a dumpster fire and a flood.
Actual dumpster fire.
Metaphorically and actually.
Yeah, and literally 3D. Oh gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time. I know that there's so much stress and dissonance feels like a good word. dis-ease in so many nervous systems right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear, and a lot of judgment and
And a
division.
lot of judgment. Yeah.
And I keep trying to remind people, and I can do this with the glee of a 6-year-old. I don't know why, but we all, I think it's because of our training, like we all came here
Yeah.
now.
Or this.
This astro, like the more you understand about astrology, the more it's
Yeah.
like, oh God,
Yeah.
it's like this isn't that person's fault or
Yeah.
that event's like
Oh,
this.
yeah.
This
No.
is so much bigger.
Yes.
And we've been waiting so long for this. We're actually waking up from a real poop dream as a collective. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
been a
easy or
collective
fun,
nightmare.
right?
It's
It's
been a
not easy or
collective
fun.
nightmare. And I think for a lot of people, they're waking up in the dream and they're like, this is a nightmare. Like maybe just realizing for the first time, maybe just over the last 10 years, like, this is a total nightmare. Look at this shit show. But you have to wake up in the dream before you can wake up from the dream. So if you're realizing it's a shit show, you're in a good place.
Yeah, you're literally on the path. And it's also really exciting because there's so much coming up to be cleared. It's
Yeah.
like
Yes.
sometimes even though I'm like, oh my God, like using the tools, doing the stuff,
Yeah.
doing the hygiene.
Yeah.
It's also so exciting. Like sometimes I can't even, I'm
I
like,
know. It makes me giddy. Yeah.
like, what's it going to be like 5 years from now? Like how much the
Yeah.
acceleration of accelerations right now
Yes.
is mind-boggling. So it's so exciting.
It is.
Not easy, not clean,
Yeah.
but exciting. So I just keep
Yeah.
sort of holding to that.
Yeah. I figure if we're all going to be floating down the flooded street with dumpster fires going on, we might as well be enjoying ourselves in the process.
Amen. Pull out the paddle. Somebody got a guitar.
Yeah. It is possible.
I love that.
I
I
love
love that, Jean.
technology.
That is the flotilla.
I know.
I like that.
Get out your flotilla with some other joyous friends.
Yeah.
I love the analogy of just I'm thinking of the microcosm and the macrocosm now, your personal experience of transformation in your process of connecting with your intuitive knowing and using spiritual tools to really know yourself and expand your capacity to live from a place of spirit. And in the process, you said you felt like you were anchored through the storm, and the process might have been very messy, but you had that trust and faith that you could move through it. And part of the process for you was shifting from operating from that more intellectual space to operating from that intuitive space as well, right? It's not like you kicked the intellect to the curb.
Yeah.
Still have it and own it, use it. It's an important tool. But that intuitive self came in as the captain in the driver's seat, so to speak. And I really see that as now, like our whole planet is going through this process of shifting from operating from that intellectual space to operating more from that intuitive space. But for a lot of people, especially if you don't even recognize that that's what's happening, it's scary, it's overwhelming, it's chaotic. There's a big storm, and where's my anchor,
For sure.
So if people aren't really centered within themselves during this time, they're going to get really washed away in that flood or fall into the dumpster fire.
I sort of feel like I get the image of like a gong being like someone's head and it being rung. Like, that's kind of what I see. Like if you're not centered in yourself, like it's so dissonant that it's not.
Yeah.
It's just wildly unpleasant.
Yes.
I can say with a smile.
Wildly unpleasant.
Like, wildly, like amusingly unpleasant.
Yes. So the importance of being able to center and ground and really know yourself and live from that intuitive place.
Time of change. And
yeah.
It's
the only way to move through this time of change with any amount of joy.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Otherwise, it's just like the suffering is getting turned up, the heat.
Super fun. I think Einstein said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant.
Yes.
Society has created a culture that reveres the servant and has forgotten the gift.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you totally nailed that quote.
Did I?
Because it came
Mostly.
to
I
mind in
suspect I
another
might have been off one with them.
conversation. In our conversation, my conversation with Gwyneth, actually, that quote came to mind, but I didn't share it because I was like, I'm not going to remember the words.
Nice, nice.
Go
Well,
with the
in my defense,
picture,
a friend of
you
mine
know.
put that on a sign that I have in my
I love
office.
it. It's so great.
But that's one of the things that I teach
Yes.
reliably in everything. You are the captain of your ship. Your intellect is your first mate. They
Yes.
can never, anything else is a mutiny.
Yeah.
Like we're not, no, and you just decline. You're like, no,
Yeah. Thanks for that information.
yeah, that's
I'm
really
going to
good
go with
recon.
this.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's
Your
good to
job
have
is
that
to, yeah,
information. It's
your job
helpful
is to help me pay
information.
my taxes while I am like healing my relationship with my body. Thank you.
It's so funny how often taxes comes up as an exple of when you
Well,
need the intellect.
I know, right? In my defense,
Definitely
it
not
is
intuitive at
March.
all.
Like, oh God.
It's like anti-intuitive, right?
Oh gosh. Yeah. But so much these tools really help. This energy hygiene is applicable.
Yes, energy hygiene. I'm sure if you could really truly be in a total space of neutrality and amusement, that's a challenge. Like how many of us are neutral when it comes to taxes? We just want to just
Yeah.
resist the heck out of that
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Sure.
blame. Oh, if it weren't for those taxes.
Survival for all the things. Yeah. No, you're totally right. But it's a great place to practice amusement for sure.
Yeah. And
Really
forgiveness. I think that's often a forgiveness practice of mine, like
nice.
somebody's taking all my money.
Yeah, right? Ugh. Yeah, that's a wild time.
It's a potent time. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me to
This
laugh.
was so great. Yeah, lots of laughing. Everybody keep laughing.
Keep laughing.
My mantra right now is literally like roots down, chins up, hearts open. And
Yeah.
we have to go in that order.
Yeah.
Like, we
That's an
can't,
important order.
if we're not rooted, we're not going to feel stable enough to actually
Yeah.
engage
Yeah.
and confident and certain enough. And if we're not confident and engaged and certain of our grounding, we're not going to feel safe enough to open our hearts, which
Right.
is the only way forward.
Only
You
way.
know, coming back to that oneness.
Yeah.
But that definitely came through this year, and I was like, oh, I think that's going to be
I love it.
going to be my program for the next.
Yes.
It's my channel.
A great mantra. And yeah, such words of wisdom to share. Roots
Thanks.
down, chins up, hearts open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Courage.
Centered in our
Courage team.
and lovingness. Thank you,
Yes.
Erin.
Thank you. Thank you so
What a
much for your
pleasure.
lightness, your light, and your amusement. I love that I'm not the loco person in this conversation laughing. It's important. It's really important.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad that you have words to share because, as I've often shared, I have not started a podcast before with just myself because I would just laugh. There would be very few words.
That would actually be its own whole transmission.
Someone just want to listen to a laugh track every week. I could support that.
I think, yeah.
We could have a laugh track. But no, I also do appreciate communicating with words and sharing our hearts and our awareness. So
I think I often am writing comedic Netflix recommendations on my little prescription pads.
Nice.
Like the most recently, it was like full on like Bridesmaids. No, you need to text me when you have what? Like this is important for your nervous system. So crucial a reset. Oh my gosh. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you.
I appreciate when it's appreciated.
Right?
And understood. I mean, I definitely get a lot of question marks,
Yeah.
Encounter a lot of question marks in people's face.
Well, you call me if you ever want to laugh. Love it. Thank you so much for having me, Jean. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks for being here, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.